Yesterday, Democrats on the New York State Board of Elections voted to cancel the presidential primary scheduled for June 3rd. Now, the congressional and state level primaries are still happening on June 23rd, but the supposed reasoning behind the cancellation of the Democratic primary at the presidential level was coronavirus concerns. So there was a thought that maybe this would essentially bring down some turnout maybe, or the fact that, the primary's already essentially been decided. Former Vice President Biden is the presumptive nominee. However, there are a number of states that have to go to hold their primaries. Here's where it gets a little tricky. Bernie Sanders has endorsed Joe Biden. He has pledged to work with Joe Biden. But when he suspended his campaign earlier this month, he said he would stay on the ballot in the remaining states' primaries in an effort to accumulate enough delegates to put pressure on the party's establishment at the Democratic National Convention in August. We've already seen a lot of backlash to this decision. You're seeing it from a number of progressives running for elected office in New York. You're seeing it from Sanders himself. His top aide, Jeff Weaver, called it, essentially an attack on democracy.
The House Democrats have been pushing for that since CARES won. They've wanted, they say it would cost about $4 billion to get the states up and ready to have an all mail-in ballot system by November if the pandemic is still, still preventing people from going to the polls. This, of course, was the case in Wisconsin. We saw it on a very small scale in that state a couple weeks ago. And now you're seeing reports that 20, 25 people who went and voted have contracted the virus. So that's the sort of crowding that they're trying to prevent is, you don't want people out and about and going to the polls. So the Democrats do want to establish an all mail-in voting system. The CARES Act had $400 million to head towards that direction, but it's not nearly enough to establish a national system. A national system meaning all 50 states would set up their own systems, but it would be federal money to help them do so. So you can bet that Pelosi and the Democrats are going to have $3.5 billion more or something like that in CARES 2 to establish such a mail-in system. Now that is going to be quite a fight because both Trump and McConnell in the Senate have said that we should not use the pandemic for political purposes, and they see this as a political power grab is the word that they're using. They think that the two issues are unrelated. It'll be tougher to make that case after Wisconsin and seeing that people actually did get sick because they were forced to go to the polls. So it's just going to be an issue of where does public sentiment land on that.
One of the unfortunate things that has happened during the middle of this conversation about vote by mail is that people have got it into their heads that vote by mail is somehow going to advantage one party over another. The overwhelming evidence that we have from political science is that vote by mail has a nonpartisan effect. That is to say, it does not have, give Democrats or Republicans an advantage in the election. So I think as we think about whether or not to implement things like vote by mail or other things that make it potentially easier for people to vote under the current circumstances, under these unknown circumstances that we're facing with COVID-19, I think it's really important for us to pay attention to the evidence and not to get locked into this idea that this is just a zero-sum game where somebody is going to lose or win based on sort of the decisions that we're making. For the most part, we really just want to focus on making sure that people who want to vote can vote. And that a lot of these election administration sort of things are not going to have some drastic partisan effect. And in fact, a lot of evidence suggests that they have very little partisan effect. What they're really going to do is make it safe for people to vote under these circumstances.